Hey New Life, it's Rachael Bernardi again. I saw this really cool post on social media this week. It said something like this. Before the internet, how did you get reliable information? How did you know things? How did you research? How did you find things out? And the response sounded something like this. It said something like this. It said, we used to just ask Aunt Maud, and whatever she said, we believed it is true for 20 years until Google told us differently. Okay. So there was this game that my husband and I discovered at an Airbnb while we were on our 20th year anniversary vacation trip. Really fun. We went to the game closet and found this really cool game. It's called Worst Case Scenario. Okay. Now this game was invented before Google was invented, and so there is some misinformation in there, okay? But in the worst case scenario game, you're given a worst case scenario, like how do you survive an avalanche, and then it gives you 3 options, maybe 4, I can't remember. So obviously one of them is the right answer, and another answer might be something like you trek across the avalanche, screaming at the top of your lungs, something like that. I don't know. It was a really fun game. Well, I discovered in reading our passage, which is in Matthew 27, verses 62 through 66, that the Chief Priests and Pharisees were also playing the worst case scenario game 2,000 years ago. Here's what it says. Now on the next day, that would be the day after Jesus' crucifixion, okay? Which is the one after the preparation. So again, the next day is Sabbath day. The chief priests and the Pharisees gathered together with Pilate. They were supposed to be Sabbathing, but we won't go there. And they said, "Sir, we remember that when he was still alive, that deceiver," they're talking about Jesus, so they're now calling him a deceiver, "said, 'After 3 days, I am to rise again. Therefore give orders for the grave to be made secure until the 3rd day. Lest the disciples come and steal him away and say to the people, he is risen from the dead, and the last deception will be worse than the first.'" Now, the chief priests and Pharisees went to Pilate with a plan, which meant they had had a meeting prior to the plan to figure out what they thought might happen. So they were playing the worst case scenario game, asking questions like, what's going to happen next? Well, he did say he was going to rise from the dead 3 days later. What's going to happen if that happens? Do we crucify him again? No, we can't do that. I don't think we can do that. Okay. Well, he rose Lazarus from the dead. And did you hear about what happened last night, the moment that Jesus died? And they'll remind themselves of another verse in Matthew 27, which says this, "And behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom." So that's the moment he passed away, okay? "And the earth shook," earthquake, "and the rocks were split. And the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised." Oh my gosh, did y'all hear about what happened last night? What happened? Not only did Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead, a little while back, but the moment he passed away, the moment that he died, all those tombs were opened. Oh my gosh. What are we gonna do? Well, I'm pretending to be a chief priest or Pharisee, okay? Maybe if we ask Pilate to make the tomb secure and he raises from the dead, then maybe he'll just be stuck there. Who knows? Doesn't say that. I'm just putting that out there, okay? So the chief priests and Pharisees were trying to do a few things here. They were trying to keep Jesus under wraps, literally. They're trying to control the outcome of Jesus' story. They're trying maybe to control the narrative. Here's what Pilate said. Pilate said to them, "Here you have a guard. Go, make it as secure as you know how." And they went and made the grave secure, and along with the guard, they set a seal on the stone. Now, when Pilate talks about a guard, he's not talking about one person. He's talking about a Roman guard, and the Roman guard consisted of anywhere from 4 to 16 combat-ready soldiers. So if you're going to guard a tomb, that should do it. Except we're talking about Jesus here, okay? Which is why Pilate said, it's so funny, make it as secure as you know how. I mean, Pilate's sitting there thinking, wait just a minute. We're talking about Jesus here, remember? And I did hear about, those tombs splitting open last night. And I did meet Lazarus. I'm like, I don't know if Pilate met Lazarus, but he's like, he surely knew about Lazarus being raised from the dead. So I bet Pilate was saying to them, I'm pretty sure that my guards can guard that tomb. But if Jesus is who he says he is, and he does raise from the dead, there is not a Roman guard on the planet that's going to keep that from happening. And so what's the point? When I was reading this, it made me think of a few times in my life where I tried to control the narrative. I tried to control the outcome of my story, but God had a bigger plan for me. And so there was a season in my life when my ex-husband came into the house and announced that he wanted a divorce. And that very day, it rocked my world. It shook me to the core. I was upset, I was angry, I was hurt, and I just didn't know what to do. And so I called a pastor friend, and he and his wife said, "You want to just come over and talk for a while?" I'm like, "Yes." So I went over there, and they invited me into their kitchen and sat down at the kitchen table. And my pastor pointed to the table, and he says, just kind of tapped on the table. He said, "Do you like puzzles?" Honestly, I do like puzzles. I have a puzzle on my kitchen table right now, trying to work it. It is a Van Gogh style, so it's kind of difficult. But I do like puzzles. And so I said, "Yes, I like puzzles." And he said, "How do you put a puzzle together?" I went, "Well, like everybody does, you start with the corners, and then you make the lines, and then you start filling in the picture in the middle." And he said, "Exactly. And that's what you've been trying to do with your life. You've been trying to keep those borders secure and then fill in the middle of it yourself. But this is how God puts a puzzle together. He walks in the room. The first thing he does is he takes his arm and he wipes the entire puzzle off the table, and it lands crashing on the floor. And then he reaches down and he picks up one piece and he puts it at the center of the table, and he says, "This is good. Focus on that one piece." And I remember sitting there just, in my mind's eye, staring at that imaginary centerpiece. And I remember asking Jesus, what is the one piece? What's the center? What's at the center of the table? And I instantly heard him say, "I'm at the center. Keep your focus on me." And so my story continued over the years very slowly. I just kept focusing on that one piece. I kept focusing on Jesus as the center of my life. And after a few years, I noticed when I would look back at that imaginary puzzle that's on the table, okay, I would see that he'd also placed a few other pieces. It's like the pieces of my life were starting to come together, not the way that I was trying to orchestrate it, but it was coming together the way that he wanted my life to be. Does that make sense? And so the more I realized that, the more I began living my life with my hands open, not trying to control the outcome, not trying to control the narrative, okay? Not trying to keep everything together, but just living my life with my hands open and releasing control. And so that's what I really feel like this story is about. It's a story about a bunch of leaders who didn't ever learn that lesson. They didn't learn, at least in this passage, they didn't learn to release control. But I invite you this morning just to take a few moments at the end of this video and just ask the Holy Spirit to show you, Lord, what is it that I'm trying to control in my own life? What is it that I need to release to you? And hold your hands out open to him. And when he shows it to you, you imagine yourself putting those things in your hands and you just release them to him. And you just say, God, I'm sorry for trying to control this. I'm sorry I've been trying to control the narrative about this. Instead, I choose to release control to you, regardless of the outcome, regardless of what happened. And I choose from today on to make sure that I'm keeping you as the center of my life instead of trying to control the story of my life. God bless you.